Hey everyone, welcome to the sixth 1inch community call. It's been a while since our last one. I think it was back in July, so thank you all for coming here. This one we're going to focus on meta governance, so a very exciting one today. I have a couple guests from StableNode and also Bankless DAOplomats. And during the call, please use the community calls text channel to ask any questions or discuss what's going on. I'm just checking it out right now. Make sure you can type in. Okay, cool. Good morning, everyone. I think we had it locked down due to spam when the call's not going on. So I'm just going to hit some 1inch network news while we wait for everyone to trickle in here. Probably the biggest news in the crypto space, is the Ethereum merge. So we upgraded the consensus algorithm from proof of work to proof of stake. And that results in like a 99.95% energy reduction. And so Ethereum was the only POW chain that 1inch was deployed on. So I'm pretty sure 1inch is now purely on POS chains. So huge cut to our carbon footprint there. Hit some statistics here. So 1inch total swap volume on just Ethereum mainnet hit $212 billion. On Polygon, we have over 9.5 million individual swaps. We have some new episodes of our YouTube series, DeFi Visions. In this series, we interview leaders in the Web3 space. Recent episodes star contributors to MetaMask, Chainlink, and Ledger, just to name a few. Go ahead, give those a watch. They're really interesting. I can post the link here in the text channel. The conference side, we've been very busy this summer. So we had ECC in Paris, mainnet in New York City, Token 2049 in Singapore, DAppCon Berlin, CoinFest in Bali, Consensus in Austin, and Korea Blockchain Week. And I'll let you guys guess where that one was. So it was very cool meeting a lot of you guys at the conferences, talking about the project. For the governance side, we had two new proposals pass, 1inch IP 08 and 09. And so that led to some treasury diversification. So just since they passed, over 350,000 1inch have been added to the treasury, as well as about 200,000 worth of ETH, WBTC, and other stables. And 1inch can now be borrowed and lent from the largest decentralized lending platform, Aave. So shout out to Llama, the meta governance group that helped us navigate that process there. Let me add some of the guests to the stage right now. I think we have Bobby from StableNode. If you guys want to raise your hands, it might help a little bit. Oh, Du is here. Oh, hi, Du. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for inviting.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I think we have Bobby here also. Let me invite him to speak. And then we also had people from Bankless DAOplomats. I'm not seeing them there, but if they raise their hand. Oh, here's one.
Hey, GM 1inch community. Thanks for the invite, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. Let's just go around and do some introductions right here. I'm sure you guys know me. I'm Jordan, Round Elephant. I do governance community work here at 1inch. Matt, Trader Snow, is here on the call. So if you want to give a short introduction, Matt.
Hey, everyone. My name is Matt, and I work on the support and community team here at 1inch.
Cool. What about you, Du?
Yes, well, next. My name is Tu. I'm a co-founder and CEO at StableNode. With StableNode, we help with especially on the governance side, of course, our delegate and helping present proposals. We're working with different protocols such as MakerDAO, Optimism, Health Finance, and now 1inch as well. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Yeah, and I go by Senat, a Bankless DAO contributor, and I do a bunch of stuff, honestly. Over that Bankless, just help, push things forward. Started with research, project championing Bankless research, which is, let's say, a revenue generating research project within Bankless DAO. Started looking into governance this year and got fascinated, probably due to my background in sociology. And so joined the DAOplomats crew and been now doing governance with them. So yeah, very exciting to be here.
Very cool. Thank you for joining. Then Xerox Bear. I'm not hearing anything. You might be on mute right now. Yeah, still not hearing anything, Xerox. Maybe we can get him back up here. So now you said you did sociology. That's quite the switch there.
I mean, depends. I always concern myself with, how does the society work, how the institutions work, how do we organize ourselves, how do we make decisions, and especially, in history and going forward. So I was quite fascinated by, discovering DAOs in general, and what blockchain technology is actually able to enable. So it's not that different though. Like there are some practices, there are some bridges that you can build, but of course there are some struggles and some, I would say, obstacles that is, we are not familiar with yet. And I think we have a lot of things to discover as well. And so I think it's an exciting journey.
Cool. So a lot of those skills can just transfer over there. Did you say something about coordination?
Yeah, as well.
I heard that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the mindset and the framework is what you can use. But other than that, I mean, the terms are mostly new, I would say. And yeah, again, everything comes down to, the technicalities as well. How can you use the technical aspect together with the human coordination in order to make the systems work? And so, yeah, with slight adaptation, you can basically use a lot of the knowledge foundation.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Generally, we throw around the term meta governance a lot. A lot of people kind of have an idea of what it is, but not totally. I don't know if I even have the same idea as you have, Sanat, or do. What is meta governance to you?
Do you want to start, or Bear? Bear, by the way, your audio is not coming through. I don't. So if you're talking, it's not working.
No, I'm not talking.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, we can hear you now. It's nice to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, man. Just to give a quick introduction, if you guys haven't already don't know me, I am Xerox Bear. I started my career at Bangless as a consultant as Bangless Consulting, and then pivoted to governance. Right now, I am very active in treasury management, treasury guild, and everything revolves around tokenomics. That's the main area of activity for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining. And just for some context here, both StableNode and the DAOplomats are being brought on board into the 1inch Network DAO as recognized delegates. So they're kind of governance as a service providers that they got a grant from the 1inch Foundation, and they're going to help us further decentralize the protocol. So,
yeah, I'll make it quick. Like when I try to frame meta governance, basically use 4 principles or like 4 rules or whatever you want to call them. First of all, that you execute the rules based on smart contracts, because we use Ethereum as our underlying layer into smart contract capability. And on the second would be that it allows us to represent delegations in the fairest and most simplest way. I think third would be that we distribute governance powers to others. And fourth would be that we create some sort of top-down as well as bottom-up structure that is truly community-orientated in order to make decisions.
So I heard bottom-up there, kind of more like a decentralized grassroots approach than the hierarchical approaches we see in traditional world.
Yeah, I think there has to be a counterweight always. I think it's difficult if it's just one way, either or the other way. There are, of course, always subject matter experts, but there has to be always the community to, have a say or, have a veto or something as a counter offer. Because if we rely too much on our so-called subject matter experts, which become the ones that make decisions from top down, then we create this sort of trust that can be further abused, or that will turn into this hierarchical structure that you're referring to, that is then not functioning because it's not representing the let's say bottom-up approach of a society, of a community. And so I really think that in a transparent, like transparency is really important. And if you enable both sides, if you enable subject matter experts to do their work, take on the responsibility and go top down, but on the other side, allow the community to have this counterweight and, form rejections or recommendations or whatever it will be, then you can create this sort of fair and I don't know how to describe it, but this environment where you basically move forward efficiently, make decisions based on consensus, and don't create inequality and unheard voices.
So you kind of touched on some pain points that we've seen in this space with DAO governance right there. The one that comes to mind is efficiency. I mean, if we kick every single decision up to the token voters like the DAOs originally started doing, the voters get fatigued, they get bogged down, and it's inefficient, right? I mean, if you have to wait on a vote for everything. The example that comes to mind is, and I love MakerDAO, but MakerDAO, when they first launched, every single decision had to go through the whole on-chain DAO voting process, to the point where they had on-chain votes every week to just adjust interest rates up or down 1%. What's your opinion on that? Kind of the whole ultra decentralized, every single thing is token voters, on-chain voting, versus kind of a more efficient model.
Yeah, I think both sides have their pros and cons. A big pro that I have in mind, if you go ultra decentralized, is you become resilient to some degree, but on the other side, you move slow. So it depends on the purpose and goal of our organizational unit. If you say, I want to become, DAO, like an umbrella that has several other organizations under them, then, working as a sort of slow moving, inefficient organization might be even good in order to protect the other organizations that are under you. So
those other ones can kind of move more efficiently if they're focused on something. They can move a little more efficiently, and then you have the DAO kind of as a sentinel watching them, making sure that they're not naughty, that they're doing their tasks.
Yes, I would say, yeah, it tends towards, it goes towards this direction. And I think delegates, electing or pointing towards people that are going to represent this organizational unit is important in order to, move efficiently. And, you can then decide which organizational unit deserves or needs truly a delegate or a delegation in order to make decisions. Again, this works. History showed that it works. The problem is if the structures become stiff and not agile. I think this is the big complexity, because in the end, we are really, we are abandoning, we abandon hierarchical structures. And I get that the hierarchical structures are very, can lean towards unintended consequences or outcomes that are not favorable. What I always try to think of is the body itself, like biology is a hierarchy. There needs to be some sort of hierarchy in a system in order to make the system work, right? If you cut off my heart, I'm going to die. It doesn't matter how my arms or my legs are or my brain. My heart makes my body work. So what is this heart in a DAO, right? That needs to work and that, has to, where all the decisions, and all the importance has to be orientated towards. And you can look at it less of a hierarchy potentially, but more of what are the most important decisions to be made in an org in order to keep the organization moving, and where can we take the trade-offs of, for example, not having every single person to vote, which now after over a year of many DAOs in existence, and MakerDAO is, I think, 5 years old already, have made the experience that you can make decisions, but it's moving very slow. And in the end, it's probably defeating the purpose and actually creating pain points for this organization in the future. So it's a tricky topic, and it's a lot of balancing, a lot of, you create something there, and what is the outcome? What are the implications? What are the consequences? And it's, a hard topic, but I mean, we at least tried to solve it, or we at least tried to find solutions.
So kind of the two main things you're balancing there are decentralization versus efficiency. I'm kind of getting that out of what you're saying there. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I would say this is probably something. Yeah, decentralization to comparing to efficiency. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Xerox Bear, do you want to talk about how having recognized delegates can help us address some of these governance pain points?
Yeah, just to start, for me, like right now, the main problems of governance is like the people voting on governance on different proposals doesn't really know what they are voting on. It really needs to be there. There should be a lot of research should be happening before making clicking yes or no button. So that's the main part which we have, main problem which we have right now. And the people voting does not really have the skills. Maybe they have some tokenomic skills, but they may not understand the complex technical skills, technical things described over there. Those kind of things are like the main problems which we have. So in order to solve that, we need people with different skills to come together and to make an informed decision together. That is like the best way to solve not just this problem, but many other problems like voter fatigue, for example. So if there is like a bunch of people, 2 or 3, who really have the skills like tokenomic skills, governance, resource skills, and a couple of other skills which could make a long leap for them, then they should join together to form a group. And if the community who cannot make the decisions on their own, who do not have the time to make the to do the research and do the voting, they can delegate to a group. They could be called as either recognized delegates if it is sponsored by the DAO, for example, if the DAO needs quality voting. And if the DAO is not planning to have this quality voting procedures, they can just vote to different meta governance groups. We have a couple of meta governance groups, just like StableNodes or us right now. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Uh,
Were you going to say something, dude?
Yeah, I think that it's also okay. So I apologize for your background noise. I just came from talking to Joe for 9. It was great to see one of his team there as well. But basically, so first one is the meta governance. I think that we are talking about with different definition because a lot of times meta governance is also about like basically people outside the one's governance influencing governance in another protocol, right? Like for example, like Index Club is a good example where they hold, for example, like a Aave token and they can influence it. And that's also the idea behind Endgame and then MetaGov within Maker as well. But regarding especially talking about the Maker governance, I did want to kind of give a feedback because it seems like, I mean, since we're the largest delegated Maker and both co-founder, we've been there for 4 years, I think that a lot of the kind of criticism that first of all, Maker governance, when it started, didn't vote on everything. Yes, we did the interest rate, but in many ways, like they were kind of limited. And then later, there are more different areas that Maker, especially like different delegates and others can reach. But what I was going to also kind of add was that it's not necessarily that that process itself is inefficient, especially once the structure is in place. But then if the structures are not ready, obviously it's going to be more inefficient. And I think there's also kind of role different delegates to trying to help to form this kind of structure as well.
Yeah, thank you for clearing that one up. Just to touch on your Index Coop meta governance provider, whatever you said there, it was actually Index Coop we reached out to about helping OneInch get onboarded onto Aave, and they pointed us over to the meta governance provider Llama, who actually used some of the Aave that's locked within DPI, which is a DeFi pulse index that Index Coop puts out, and that helped us actually reach quorum there for the vote. So yeah, we had a great experience with them there. We've been talking about delegation a lot, but I don't think we've actually really taken it to the base level and explained how it works. With OneInch voting, we use Snapshot, which is off-chain voting, so it doesn't cost any gas to vote. And the delegation process there is just a little on-chain. It's one signing. It doesn't cost much Ether to actually submit that transaction. But you still hold your tokens. You're just delegating the vote to somebody else. You're not actually, it's non-custodial, it's trustless. So I guess I'm trying to say you're only trusting the people to make a proper vote. You're not actually entrusting them with all of your funds. Xerox Bear, do you want to talk about, sorry, totally slipped my mind. Oh, the exact kind of deliverables that you guys are going to do as recognized delegates. Are you going to help people with editing posts, or is it just going to be your own proposals you're pushing forward to the DAO? I think you're on mute. If you want to take it, do, or Sened.
Yeah, especially from StableNode side, we believe that it's a mixture, right? So you do have to, for example, if there are other proposals that are happening in the community, and you feel like that you want to also, participate, then you can go and edit and also make suggestions. I think it's also possible for delegates to make their own proposals as well. And then we also seen a lot of cases where delegates also work with other delegates or other holders or other communities to have this kind of collaboration as well, which we've seen a lot, especially regarding MakerDAO. So I think that's kind of the one of the paths where it's not just what delegates think, it's also what the community thinks, and delegates just help to edit it and make it smoother and also more standardized.
So you kind of touched on something there. There's some benefits to having a delegate that's active in multiple different DAOs, right? I mean, if they're completely plugged in and know the inner workings of different DAOs, and here in DeFi, we're all into the money Lego and collaboration, building off of each other. You guys might be able to help us better integrate with Maker or something like that if you're cool. Do you want to answer that question also? Looks like 0x Bear is dropping off, but I think he's back now.
Bear, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, can you guess me now?
Yeah, let's go.
Well, this is really rugging me. Anyways, the initial idea of Bankless DAOplomats to be like the voice of Bankless DAO and be anyone who vibes with the Bankless mission. And that's how we have initially formed the entire project. And since we have migrated into helping other DAOs in governance, we changed our mission to help everyone who is vibing with our guiding principles. That includes decentralization, the Bankless mission, and non-hostility approach. So any community member from 1inch can actually ask us to take the look at their proposals, have a comment on that, and even have us like proxy order their proposals. That says we will be helping them getting through the process of 1inch governance process, making it to the forums, gathering even of community support and feedback, etc. That's like the basic idea of DAOplomats.
Because we've seen some really good proposals come through 1inch DAO, and then it seems like sometimes just kind of the last 10% of the proposal just needs to be kind of polished up and finalized to make the proposal actually actionable. You kind of want everything fully defined so there's no ambiguity when it's going to a vote. And it seems like you'd help with that process there, right?
Yeah, there are actually a couple of interesting proposals in the 1inch forums which could be touched up a little bit if the others are interested. So that's something which we will be really doing.
So you guys are getting onboarded here as recognized delegates over the next few weeks. What's kind of going to be your number one priority with the 1inch DAO? What are you going to work with us to improve? I mean, you kind of said the overreaching like coordination aspects, decentralization aspects. Is there anything just as broad or anything more specific?
I personally am a community member of 1inch. I've been actively authoring different proposals in 1inch DAO for a while, and I have gathered some correct ideas which I had and put a proposal or a kind of document which underlines the methods which we could go to kickstart the second stage of decentralization for 1inch DAO. So we will be focusing on onboarding new community members, how working this, helping them coming up with interesting proposals, having a guild structure where everyone can contribute, etc. That's the main aspect. And the second one will be focusing on the on the 1inch tokenomics. Yeah, that's something which we are interested to.
Cool. I think I just linked to the proposal you were talking about in the community calls chat there. Kickstarting stage 2 decentralization of 1inch DAO, right?
Yeah, that's the one from June.
Cool. And then also we have the snapshot delegate mega thread where both DAOplomats and also StableNode have given their delegate application there, kind of what values they adhere to, their delegate pitch, and then certain things that they've committed to, like explaining why they voted a certain way on a past proposal.
Yes, I think that I can speak more about that, which is basically as a delegate, there are certain procedures as well as culture that we especially want to foster in different communities. And in many ways, I think that one of the problem with a lot of delegates or even token holders with governance and community is that there's not much communication, especially regarding the reasons why they voted. And you can imagine that the reason why such is important, especially for delegates who want to adhere to such core values, is that then people can see whether such voting is consistent with their values, right? So people don't know whether it's something that's personal or something that's rational, or whether it's something based on integrity or others. So that's part of the culture that we really want to foster in the One Inch community as well.
Cool. So we have a question here in the governance chat. During the call, guys, try to use the community calls chat because it's easier for us to just keep track of everything. But they're asking how they reach out to you guys regarding proposals. If they have a proposal that they want, like Bankless DAOplomats to look over and help edit, what's the process there? Do they just ping you on the forum? Or maybe they don't want to post it to the forum yet because they don't think it's ready. Just they DM you.
We at DAOplomats are planning to start a forum thread where they can ask comments if this is already public, and our DMs are always open, so anything is welcome.
Yes, I think these are the two best solutions for now. We also try to navigate and figure out, how to best coordinate the communication and Web3 using the tools that are given to us. And so we will, try it this way and then expand perhaps. But I think this should work at the start, especially.
Cool.
Yeah, we agree as well. But in addition, there can be also types of groups as well. So it doesn't necessarily have to be as detailed as, for example, working groups. But it's also possible to, for example, have an initiative where you can not only invite delegates, but others to come and give different feedbacks and try to refine it. And also in some communities, there might be some that focus on governance aspect as well to see whether it's like something that can follow the procedure. Because sometimes people might have an idea, but putting it to proposal also needs to be standards that they need to follow.
Okay, cool. Thank you. During this call, guys, just any questions you have, just post it in the community calls chat. You can also raise your hands and we can add you to the stage if you actually want to voice your question. Liam, I'm having trouble reading your whole question right now. Do you want me to add you to the stage? You can ask it. Oh, the RFC chat. I was thinking RFC is in like the layer 1 node infrastructure. Okay. So Bruce is asking about incentives there. I mean, so from the point of view of someone who's coming in, maybe they're not a huge 1-inch holder. So even if the token price were to pump from those, they wouldn't really benefit from it. He says there's kind of little incentive to actually do the work of writing a proposal and submitting it, stuff like that, whether or not the proposal is actually voted on and passes. What's your opinion on that, guys? Do you think we need more incentives?
I'd like to say that it really depends, but for especially MakerDAO, there are incentive for participants to both propose as well as post on the forum as well. So for posting on the forum, we have a mechanism called a source cred, which basically means that if they post something that gains a lot of like or comments, then they can get compensated for it, and they do get paid in stablecoin DAI. And then there's also separate incentive for people to post different proposals. The incentive also applies to delegates as well. However, there's some kind of limits to such proposals. So it cannot be a proposal that's related to budget. So the reason is that such are pretty common. The idea is that basically if you want to have such incentive, it can help making proposals, but you also want to encourage proposals that are in a way more unique and also more diverse. So I think it's something that especially One Inch community can discuss as well. But we have seen that there's also kind of cap on the reward, because you can imagine that for a lot of people, for example, if there's a good proposal that passes, whether it's $1,000, $2,000 might not make a big difference. Now, it being $100 to $1,000, it might make a big difference. So there's definitely balance that the community need to consider.
So how do you address things like Sybil attacks there? You said kind of if the proposals received a lot of good feedback that they might be eligible for that reward. How do you make sure it's not just one guy spinning up 30 different accounts and liking everything and saying, great job, I want to vote for this?
So there's some limits to it. So meaning that most importantly, it has to pass the vote. So you can imagine that if there's one guy that has a lot of different proposals that are very low quality, well, then the community will see it and then they won't, vote for it. But if it's something that's actually good, and let's say somebody proposed like 30 different proposals, they actually go through the voting and it passes, that's not necessarily bad because that just means that there's one person or one group that has a lot of good ideas, right? And then doesn't matter that idea came from 15 different people or one person, as long as that idea and the proposal do help the community a lot, is something that's beneficial. Is kind of our stance. But obviously, you do want to provide and also promote diversity as well, if possible. That's why there's also, instead of giving it all, usually you kind of divide it. So you basically have a little, big, I would say big, but you have a budget and then split from there instead of just having a limited budget to kind of prevent it.
Okay, thank you. Thoughts on that from the Bankless DAOplomats?
I am actually a huge fan of rewarding governance participations, and I tend to call this as governance mining programs, where people can actually really take part in quality discussion and make quality proposals. But the governance mining program, which I envision, is totally against simply making proposals and putting it in the forums and not really doing anything. This should be rewarded. Like if someone wants to make a proposal, they also should be the ones who are going to implement or find ways to implement that and take part in the entire process of the proposal. That's something which I am really leaned upon. So really interested in that.
So you kind of touched on like kind of transcending past just like signaling proposals, like a proposal where they're just signaling to the 1inch Foundation to do something, to actually a proposal where the DAO's totally doing it themselves. Like maybe an idea is, I mean, you had an idea in the past, your grants proposal, or another one would be like maybe an analytics dashboard for 1inch, or even a 1inch treasury dashboard. Stuff like that could be fully like voted on, funded, and executed through the DAO, right?
Yeah, that's that really needs some human coordination. Really needs some discussions and a thought process. That's some things which we have to reward, not just making or copying proposals from other DAOs and submitting it to the forums.
Yeah, that's a good point. And will you help with that process too? If we're looking to source an entire team to build a, let's say the DAO votes to give $100,000 to make an analytics dashboard, would you help with actually sourcing that team and stuff like that? Or
some of the ideas which I have in that kickstarting stage 2 decentralization really needs a lot of new members or really need active members in the DAO. So that will be something which we'll be actively helping on.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe to highlight like a different perspective, a project or an entity that Bankless DAO is currently working on with a partnership called ThriveCoin is actually going to reward people for contributions they make. And let's put it this way, meaningful contributions. And then like, how do you estimate meaningful contributions and what do you reward? And so we, for example, take Snapshot, votes on Snapshot, as well as participation on Discord, and reward people with thank you notes or the possibility to participate in raffles in order to, have the chance to win prizes. And this is like an incentive really to, bootstrap and support the community participation in governance, but also, to recognize each other's work in some sort of way. And I think the most interesting part is when we're talking about governance and why should you participate in governance, first and foremost, I think if it's everybody's responsibility, it's no one's. There has to be always, in that, like historically and until now, there's always a group of people standing out, willing to take on the responsibility and try their best to represent a community, right? And so I would say, what's the incentive? The incentive is you are a shareholder, you are owner with the token. You have basically ownership in this enterprise organization. And I think for me personally, when I think of, what being a delegate in organizations, besides, participating in actively in bankless DAO governance, is with a token, I basically have ownership, and I, have a stake. And with the stake, I have these responsibilities, right? And so it's my duty to try the best to make smart decisions, to, bring the community forward, and in the end also myself. And so everybody has something out of it.
Nice. Thank you for that. Let's open up the floor to questions from the community right now. I've seen some come through this community calls text chat, but I'm not sure which ones are exact questions and which ones are more general comments. Okay, Bruce has a good comment about kind of lack of visibility with DAO topic. Right now, we have 1inch governance is kind of fractured across a few different tools right now. I mean, we have Discord and Telegram where we discuss proposals and ideas kind of in a more informal setting. We have the 1inch governance forum where we try to kind of meld these ideas, form them into an actual a firm, well-established idea that can be executed, And then we have Snapshot where we're actually voting. And so there's a few different tools there, and none of these actually are visible directly from the 1inch DApp. If you're a 1inch swap user, you might not know at all that there's an active proposal. I think that's kind of what Bruce is getting at there.
Yeah, I think a potential solution for that is finding consensus on where you want to. So what we have in Bankless DAO, for example, is we have Discourse, and we have the option we have this integration between Discourse and Discord, where as soon as a proposal is submitted, there's a channel on Discord where a notification pops up, and everybody gets, this notification that there's a proposal that probably needs a vote. Like, we don't always have proposals to vote on. We also have, these sort of temp checks. And I think this is one way of creating visibility on proposals within the community. When it comes to Telegram channels, it's a bit difficult. Like, organizing work in Telegram channels can be very, gated. And so Discord is already pretty gated, honestly, even though, we can argue on that. But for some people, it's still a burden, and it's still a difficulty to participate. And so when you talk about, Telegram on top of that, it can get quite messy. So we were in a pretty similar situation in Bankless DAO, and what the governance solution engineers, which is an initiative or a group, again, a delegation within Bankless DAO that has agreed on figuring out the current state of Bankless DAO governance structure, building on top of that, forming recommendations for future sort of roadmap and implementations. What they have sort of agreed on is to create a constitution or a handbook of, this is Bankless DAO 1.0. Okay, what could, now we are Bankless DAO 1.5, bringing Bankless DAO to the next level. This is sort of this transition phase. And how could Bankless DAO 2.0 look like? And actually, this is the current state, Bankless DAO, where we make recommendations on, how can we up-level the organization, build more structure to help, create more visibility for stuff, as well as, not trading it off with consensus, and not reaching broader audience within our community. And so, especially in Bankless DAO, where we have really a large community, many members, it can get sometimes sort of difficult. But I think this is the challenge in the end that needs to be solved. And this is also the interest, the spike why you're doing that, is figuring out in the end, how can you move forward, reach consensus, stay transparent, make everybody getting heard. And also for new members that come on, which is also very important. And I think this ties into what Bruce says, if everything is sort of gated and is not visible, imagine how it is for new members to come in. They might figure out, oh, there's some sort of governance and proposals after being weeks in the community. This is not good. Ideally, one of the first things that they should see is the area where it's getting debated, like the proposal area, the discourse, right? Where they can maybe start engaging and seeing, what is currently being developed, what's the current state, what are people debating on, what are the opinions on this and that. And so, yeah, I think these are sort of parts that are going to get solved. And I'm actually very excited to see, how delegates can contribute to making these improvements in the given period of time.
Yeah, maybe that's something we can work on when you guys are onboarded, kind of a 1inch DAO constitution or something with the 1inch DAO values there. And then also maybe some better DAO tooling. I know like we're often approached by DAO tooling projects asking for an integration. It's just kind of hard because some of the projects want you to go to their site, and it seems like from my point of view, that's kind of just adding to the problem of kind of fracture siloed DAO discussion rather than solving the problem of everything being fractured. Bruce has been talking a lot about a DAO 1inch DAO governance dashboard. What are your guys' opinion on that? Do you think that will help at all?
I think that what we are kind of mistaken is the fact that, like, for example, for 1inch, right? Like, the reason why we talk about the visibility, but at the same time, there only been less than 10 votes on Snapshot. Like for Maker, there are 7 to 10 votes per week. Even for, bankless DAOs that we've been talking about, they have ongoing voting as well. So before we talk about why it's not visible, maybe also the issue is that there are not many like topics that have been discussed and proposed to really give the visibility in the first place, right? So even if you have, let's say, dashboards, like we also need to think about, okay, but for those dashboard to be useful is if there are a lot of issues and proposals as well as a lot of like voting history to kind of read on it. So I think that we need to kind of rethink about it and say, okay, well, right now there are not many, let's say, active governance like the participants and proposals, and that's something that we need to fix first before we talk about like how can we increase the visibility, how can we increase, for example, having more insight to it, because for now, I mean, those are something that comes from having more active governance in the first place. So I think that we need to kind of rethink about the, I would say, process.
I think that's a really good point you brought up. It's hard to drive a lot of interest in voting if there's only like on average a vote every 2 months, so it's a really good point you bring up there. And I guess I want to say that's why I'm so excited about having these recognized delegate groups come on, because I feel they can really help us actually drive some quality discussions in the DAO and help actually start investing some of the money the DAO has been accumulating over the last year. I think it's about 15 or 16 million now. And to my knowledge, I don't think the DAO has ever spent $1 of that. That money could go a long way in furthering the protocol or generating incentives. One thing that they're bringing up actually in the chat is offsetting historical carbon emissions of 1inch. What do you guys think about that? The whole carbon credit market is kind of confusing to me.
I can only agree. I think if we do that, like what I would recommend, or what I have to check with, of course, Jenga, Jojo, and Xerox Bear, is if we want to offset, or if 1inch wants to offset carbon emissions, and really, tries to enter this market and proceed with the steps, then it should be with companies, and it should be in a way of that it's not just for marketing. Because what happens regularly is that companies offset their carbon emissions, and they support companies which basically just acquire land or support specific people or support specific initiatives where plants would be planted anyways. So it's like it's just actually making things worse, because you're creating this illusion of offsetting carbon emissions. And actually just creating a new market where you can invest money in. But on the other side, you produce these emissions. On the other side, you don't really offset them. You just basically,
I've heard the term greenwashing before.
It's basically how, if 1inch wants to do that, how can 1inch do that without, being a victim of greenwashing in the end, would be as far as I can see. And I think we are aligned there. But I'm curious, what the others think.
Yeah, I personally can't talk that much on it because I've tried to dig into that market a couple times, and it's just really hard to wrap my head around.
Yeah, but I actually think it's an interesting point, because I would say the 1inch is already doing quite a lot to help. For example, I saw during the Korea Blockchain Week, one is sponsoring, for example, the Formula E, right? And then the idea that, for example, way to promote these electrical cars, And the reason why a lot of different companies, they're conscious of those, they like to sponsor is because it's a way to promote electric cars and thus greener cars, right? So I would say that there are already marketing initiative going on. So if the kind of question is like, okay, but maybe, for example, as a team, we should do more, then I think that it's also something about like, not just from the DAO side, but overall, like there's this marketing strategy, and maybe it's just about like spreading the word out, right? So I think it's something that has to be, I mean, also, I do think, I mean, so this was actually happened at Maker as well, but just like, even if you can, for example, have a voting and then kind of have the sentiment, but at the end of the day, getting into, let's say, details is something that's very difficult, right? Because there's so many ways to try to approach it. So one of the alternatives is, for example, collaborate with some of the protocols that try to combat it. I think that there's a Climia DAO here as well, like who also try to offset it. So you can imagine, for example, a DAO trying to push for such proposals to work with such DAOs or other companies can, for example, help as well. But I do want to say that it's something that like details have been very difficult to execute.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're coming up on the last few minutes here. Tanner, do you want to talk about how these guys can claim their POAP? Can add you to it. Oh, here he is.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, after the call ends, everyone who's been in the call for, I think it's around 10 or 15 minutes and hasn't been sitting on deafen or mute, you can type /claim and in Discord, in just the community chat, it'll have the bot talk to you privately, and it'll give you a claim code so you can get the POAP for this week's community call.
Cool. Just to clear that up, they can be muted. It's just they can't mute the stage, right?
I think that's correct.
Okay, cool.
Oh yeah, their mics, yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, yeah, the audio coming in to your speakers.
Yeah, any last minute questions now before we close up, guys? Bruce brought up a good point that it's kind of hard to encourage people to invest in offsetting their carbon in a bear market. Everybody's kind of feeling, I mean, we have a crypto bear market and kind of a wider energy crisis and stuff like that. So it's kind of hard to to encourage people to do the right thing when they're personally suffering. Cool. Yeah, I think that's about everything. I don't see any other major questions coming in, but thank you all for attending. And as soon as we have these delegates completely onboarded, we're going to be announcing maybe a blog post or something so we really reach everyone and encourage people to start delegating. But thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan, for leading this call, and thanks to all the delegates that have been here. And I enjoyed it. Yeah, looking forward.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.